I'm John Berger, Executive Director of the Association of Southeastern Research Libraries, ASRL. Very glad to have you with us today. We are here to talk with my colleague. One of the great things about working with Elaina Norlin is not only is she a brilliant program coordinator and has lots and lots of connections, she is an organizational expert in her own right, and has done consulting work with numerous organizations and library groups around the world. So we're really lucky to have her today talking about her insights about sort of what's happening in the library world these days. So very pleased to have her with us. There we go.
Okay. All right. So it's there. Great, great, great. So yes, as John says, we're in new software, so it'll get glitchy. Uh, but just like John says, my name is Elaina. I am over professional development here at ACERO, and today's talk is on stop waiting to be laid off, and it's 5 expert suggestions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey to finding out this information. And hopefully, it's a journey that will resonate with you. So, I was watching at the end of 2025. There was a lot of articles. Wall Street Journal covered one of it, but it was quite a bit of articles and talk about over 1 million employees were laid off in 2025. The number they actually had actually was 1.2, but 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, but it was over a million employees. And me being not only a librarian, but a researcher, just started to be really curious about what does this mean? Like, what is going on? Like my instinctual instinct to like find out more information. And what the experts or the Harvard research, the economists, the Wall Street Journal, and all the people were saying was that we were estimating even more layoffs in 2026. Some were all the way up to 3 million, some were another 1 million, but almost all of them had agreed that we were going to have a lot more layoffs in 2026 and we were going to have a very slow job growth. Which really made me sort of like, as somebody who's written a book about employee engagement, who does a lot of research in terms of employees and the human aspects of employees, like what happens to all of this and how does it impact us as employees. I started to do my own research about what does this mean? What if we are going to be susceptible to be possibly laid off? What does that look like? What could we do to be a little bit more proactive than reactive? So I, as a librarian and researcher, started to do some studies and just sort of to look at this. But I also, in one case, has been trying to spend a little bit more time with AI at the same time. So what I decided to do is do an experiment, which was to actually do my own research as a researcher and then actually go to all of the favorite large language models and see if they match the same research that I have, or do they see the same patterns that I see? And is there sort of a continuity in the information that I was finding? So this is kind of what this is. It's a combination. I'm going to give you the 5 things that not only did I find, but all large language models found at the same time. And like I said, I was looking for consistency in results. So the ones that I used for this experiment was Gemini, ChatGPT, Plexity, Claude. I will tell you right now that one of them I threw out because I just wasn't really that happy with the results. You can think of it right now. You can put it into the chat, but you can think of it right with now. Which one did I actually throw out? Which one do you think of these 4 that I said, "No, I don't really wanna be bothered with?" And I will reveal that in just a few minutes. So, what I wanted to let you know, how I did this is that I used the same prompt for all the large language models, the exact same prompt, and I also did a few extra steps, depending on the results that I found. So, what I had them do is to pretend that they were a workplace strategy consultant with over 15 years of experience. I told them that their client wants them to compile research from a variety of outlets, and I did name the resources. I named examples and then asked them to look at other examples as well. I said Harvard Research, economists, HR trends. I use that as here's some examples. And those are examples that I had already researched, but also said find other things like in this realm. I said also produce the five top trends and use concrete examples. I didn't want to just have just things. I wanted them to ask, tell me why they were coming up with those top five trends. And then also from some of the research that I did, I wanted it to then check its results and then provide an accuracy score. So, like if they did have statistics and stuff like that, I had them rate the results that they had for accuracy, confidence. How confident are with this information? Really looking for hallucinations or where they're just like blowing smoke up my butt. So I wanted that extra I did that extra prompt just for me, for my research, but also to just, to really check in to see what was actually accurate and what was not. After every time I did this prompt, I did have it rank at the same time. So the first one I used, which now you already know, the first one was Perplexity. I started with Perplexity. I have used Perplexity in the past, and I find Perplexity to be, especially when I'm using it for research, and usually that's what I'm using it for. I find it to be like Netflix, that it's really quick to go to ask me to pay for Pro, right? I think it allows 2 or 3 sort of research things, and then, they're pushing you to do Pro. And I almost kind of find it a little bit like Netflix in a sense, sort of like if you were, like, borrowing your parents' password in order to watch a movie. Not like I have ever borrowed my parents' password to watch movies, but if I was borrowing passwords to watch movies, it feels like Netflix where they shut you down immediately, and not allow you to do it. Perplexity only will allow a certain amount of things, and even if it says you're done for the day, whatever I'm else trying to do, it's sort of still telling me I need to go to Pro. So the reason I started with Perplexity first is because I knew I had to have all of my ducks in a row. I knew I needed to have my prompt and all of the things that I wanted together before literally Perplexity shut me down. And what I would say out of all the ones that I did try, Perplexity was really, really good in terms of looking at other things out there, looking at other examples that I didn't have in the list of 4 examples. I found that when I asked it for in terms of hallucinations, it was hallucinating a little bit less than the others. I found that when it was ranking the accuracy of it, it was a lot more accurate than the other ones. The results weren't really that exciting or interesting. I mean, it was really very straight chaser, but in terms of just basic research and information that I could use, I would say it was very good for that. But if you are using free and for all of those, I think I might have said it. I didn't say it earlier. I only use free. I didn't go to any pros for any of this. So for free, in terms of really being really crystal clear of what you wanted to do in terms of your research, it really delivered in terms of results. Next one, actually, I have a confession. I usually do use Gemini, not very often, but sometimes if I have a lot of information, I think need things to be more concise or something like that, I would use Gemini. I've used Gemini probably more than I've used the others. Gemini, I changed its name and now it's Jimmy. And I always use Jimmy just for straight no chaser. Just give me the facts. Let me get the information and move on. What I found for this particular one, because I did this study early January, is that it's obvious that Gemini has an upgrade. It was completely different experience than I had from before. Jimmy was actually fun, which Jimmy was never fun. Jimmy had never been fun before. And so I knew it right away because, like, soon as I put in the prompt, it said, "Hey, Lena." I'm like, "Hey, Lena." It's like, "Yeah, Lena, I'm your favorite workplace consultant." I'm like, "Jimmy?" And it was really just sort of like in terms of like anticipating other things that I needed, things that I hadn't thought about. It wasn't just, they went beyond just sort of, here's your research, here's what you're asking for, to really prompt me to think of things that I might have not thought of. Uh, was it more in terms of research than Perplexity? No, no. I think Perplexity was better. but was in terms of me sort of thinking through and really feeling like Jimmy was my consultant. Yes. Did it feel definitely different than the Jimmy that I used a couple of months ago? Yes, it definitely was upgraded. And I would say out of all of the results I had, I probably got a lot more from this search because I was being prompted to think about things. It was sort of like, "Hey, have you thought of this?" I'm like, "No." "Hey, do you want a little bit more of this?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Hey, I bet you could do more with this." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." So, I would say out of all of the ones, this was probably the most enjoyable research experience I had. Claude, as you can now tell that the one I didn't use was ChatGPT. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But for Claude, it was the most detailed one. It provided pages and pages and pages of results that I had to filter through. It made me think about things because it was so detailed oriented that it allowed me for the other ones that did still have a lot of information. Claude really had a lot of detail that allowed me as a researcher and as a librarian, it was really nice to read it. However, Claude had more hallucinations than all of them combined. Claude even said that only 60,000 people had been laid off in 2025, which is it was just out and out wrong. It said on the estimate, like maybe 2,000 people will be laid off in 2026, which was just, I don't even believe that. So Claude was the one that I had to keep going back and actually testing the accuracy and making it go back and forth. The reason I still included it, because outside of those particular hallucinations that we had to work out, it did provide the most depth. It was much more in depth than any of the others. But I think out of all the definitely more than Google and Perplexity, which had a few hallucinations, but nothing that dramatic as Claude, which was just even the eyeball test knew that these numbers were not correct. So for this particular assignment, I would keep that in mind. Luckily, I had already done my own research, so I kind of knew what the numbers were supposed to look like. But if you don't, please do that accuracy score test at the end because yeah, I caught a lot of errors. And then ChatGPT, the free version, remember I was using free for every one of these. It was a letdown in a sense of it did provide really good information, but it was just very average. It didn't provide anything that the others provided was better. And I know I have a lot of friends who love ChatGPT, but they pay for it, and I think you would probably get a lot more richness paying for it, but the free version was just kind of it wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it was just so not bringing anything really interesting to the table that I just sort of eliminated it as the overall 5. We could talk about that later, or you could put some comments on that, but I was as somebody who doesn't use ChatGPT often, I was expecting more than what I got. So without further ado, I'm gonna get you to the and here's what I had found out that from my research and the consistent advice that I got from all of the large language models when I was going. The first thing is that they all said we need to start as employees thinking of our role, not our job titles. It says across sectors, companies are cutting whole layers of similar roles while keeping or even hiring people who are flexible to adapt to rapid change. And I know this in full disclosure, I know a couple of people who were laid off last year in that 1.2 thing. And their jobs were eliminated because of not really because of AI, but it was because it was no longer needed and the person was still doing that job and it was no longer needed. So understanding about what you're doing and how it fits into the organization and if it is something that you're holding on to, but it's not really relevant to where the organization is going, that is kind of where they're talking about here. Also, this says layoffs in 2025 often target routine, duplicated, or low impact positions, not the individuals who own critical outcomes and unique expertise. That means that I feel, and I always feel this, and anybody who's done or watched or attended my workshops before know that I feel that everybody brings unique talent, skills, and abilities to their job, period. But to know how you fit in, if you don't remember anything else from this talk, how do you fit into this organization? What is your unique talent, skills, and abilities? And if even if it's not in your exact roles, how can you transcend your unique talents to make a difference? I think that's kind of the objective of this section. And then the way they say, Claude said this, and I thought this was really good. If your job title was eliminated tomorrow, what do you bring to the organization that will make it hard to let you go? So that's the question for that. I'll say that again. If your title was eliminated tomorrow, what do you bring to the organization that will make it hard to let you go? I guess I should ask John that if professional development was let go, but that's sort of the things that you need to be thinking about. Second one is build skills the job market wants, not just your boss. And this goes towards like as you're thinking for the future of 2026 and what kinds of things that you want to concentrate on in terms of your own development. What do I want to do in terms of what do I want to learn? And so this is review your skill set for your next job. And even if your next job is actually still in the same organization, even if your job is going to be transitioned with something else, right? Really think about what in your particular track has the two or three in-demand skills. And then that is what you should be focusing on. Not just, this is my job, so I'm going to do a little bit more of my job, but what are some things that I feel like I need to pick up in order for me to be much more marketable. And then also keep in mind that as we look more and more at AI, the research has said, and even AI was saying over and over and over again in my research, is that we need to focus in on our human skills, like things that AI naturally doesn't do, right? So, you know, facilitation. Can we get better in conflict resolution? Because conflict resolution is always going to be needed in organizations? How do we take the data that's been given to us and really tell compelling stories? Because it's not something that AI can do very well. How can we be better with team building and so on? These are how can we look at what we do, what something else, so some kind of technology could do, but what we naturally do better. And if you're already doing this, how can you do this a little bit better? How can you take less, get even better in these areas? So you can remain marketable. And then this is what they all said, and this is what I have been reading too. Is how can you work with AI and not be replaced by AI? I don't know if I believe this section, but this is what Perplexity had said is by 2030, around a quarter to a third of jobs in advanced economies are at a high risk of automation, and most remaining jobs will have a large portion of tasks changed by AI. The roles disappearing fastest are routine and rule-based. As you can hear, it says it over and over again, the routine and rule-based. The roles growing blend technical fluency with judgment, creativity, and relationship skills. So how can we be the ones that actually controlling the AI ship instead of the other way around? And how do we look at what we're doing and figure out a way to whether it's AR or whether it's any other emerging technology tool, use the tools to make our work more efficient, to make sure that we're not burning out, to have something do part of our job a little bit better so we can focus in on something. The other advice was act like an internal consultant, move away from task-oriented, quantity-focused based work to problem solver and willing to try new things, change agent. What I would say that all of the think pace, Harvard, Chronicle, all the articles that show that we need to be much more problem solving. Nobody's saying more like do more with less or stress out or work even harder hours, but how can we problem solve and do things and make changes within the structure, sort of like a consultant does. And then also, how can you use emerging technology tools to streamline tasks and focus more on strategy and solving problems. Solving problems, flexibility, and things like that seem to be the trend. It was said over and over again. Even the research that I did independently, that was what was being said to us, and that is the overall trends for where we should be going and thinking about it in the land of AI. And finally, all said, this wasn't something that I researched, but it was interesting that almost all four of the large language models said that we needed to do is relationship building is a necessity. It said internal that we should be book one 20-minute virtual coffee per week with someone outside your immediate team if you have a larger organization. And they said be on the person who welcomes new hires and helps them onboard faster and support colleagues publicly in meetings. What they're saying is that it's still people who get stay in their jobs or get laid off of their jobs are people that people like and know. And if you're in a situation where people do not know you or people do not know who you are, you're in much more of a vulnerable situation of being laid off. What these sort of, if you're a hybrid or you're, you know, work remotely, they're stressing that you still should be meeting with people, connecting with people, talking to people, and doing things like that. I would say that this really resonated with me because I talked to an HR person who did lay off. They laid off quite a few people in their organization, and I sat and chatted with her. And she said, and I thought that she would have laid people off who were more closer to retirement or, are on their way out. And she said, no, we got into a room and we looked over the organizational list. And if we didn't know them or didn't feel like they were contributing, those were the people we let go. And that was a real eye opener to me. That was a little shocking to me, but that is the times that we live in. And it really resonated with me internally that making sure that you get to know people and that people know you is more important than you realize. And then external, they said to be much more active in LinkedIn, and actually get more active in terms of your professional associations and stuff like that. The overall advice was that people need to know you and that people need to get to know you and that just relying on you've done a good job for XYZ amount of years, so therefore you're protected, was not the advice that I was getting. And that was not the advice that I was reading as well. That even if you're more introverted, how can you still sort of connect even through a sort of a platform or chatting with people in order to have people get to know you a little bit better. So that was quick and dirty because I want to leave some time for questions. If you have any questions that I'm not there, just let me know and I'm happy to answer them.
Hey, Elaina, I'm not sure if you can see the questions or not. If not, I will relay what's been submitted. First of all, somebody was wondering which of the AI tools did you eliminate? At least one person thought you might eliminate Claude, not ChatGPT. Question
It was
about the
close.
slides. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was close. Yeah.
Yeah. Will slides be shared after? Yes. This session is being recorded and will be posted on our archive page, acerl.org/archive, along with the slides. And here's one of the questions that I had. It's open it up completely. It's a little compressed. Talk more about the accuracy checking part of your research. Does a machine that hallucinates know that it's hallucinating? Is my question.
I don't I don't think so. I don't know. All I know is when I had read where that whole concept of checking for accuracy from someone else, which I thought was brilliant. And what I can say is when I did say, hey, rank the five results that you just provided me in terms of competency and accuracy, it was pretty accurate that like, oh no, it's 20%. This one is only I'm only confident about this one, 20%. And I was like, "Well, can you go back and do this and that?" And then they would have to go back, and then it would just get higher as I would make it go back. But yeah, I was really surprised that it was like, "Oh yeah, actually, really not that confident with this one." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, you're certainly seeing almost every day, the impact of AI hallucinations in all sorts of areas, particularly around scholarly communication. I forget what I was reading yesterday, some guy who was an expert reviewer, peer reviewer, who was reading an article and doing peer review on an article that cited him, the reviewer, but the article didn't exist. He never wrote the article. So
right.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It looks good. It sounds like something I might say, but I never actually said it.
But I think Perplexity is good for that because Perplexity will tell you what it's citing, and you can go back and look at the list and see if it's real or not. So I do like that about Perplexity.
That was the thing, if I was going to have to choose one for this kind of work, particularly the fact that they do provide citations and make it relatively easy to check and see if they're real or not is an important factor.
And it had the fewest amount of hallucinations than the others.
Did it? Yeah. Um, let's see here. What are the earliest non-obvious signals that layoffs are becoming likely? Things employees usually miss or misinterpret.
I think that when I talk to people, I think people kind of know something is wrong. I've been in organizations where they've laid people off too. And usually you get mumblings. Usually the grapevine is pretty good with that. And what's hard to me, I'm hedging because I used to work in an organization where I used to be in the top management. So I knew kind of what was going on. And I knew my employees kind of knew from the grapevine that something was going on, but I was sworn to secrecy. But what I always would tell my staff is that there's some things I can't tell you, but there's other things I can tell you. And like I would play a game of let them play a game of I couldn't tell you like, 15 of people are going to be laid off, but I can tell you that, you know, you need you need to be thinking about this or thinking about that. I mean, if you feel that the budget doesn't look good, you work in an organization and you heard that the organization is not doing well or something just immediately happened, I would start actually asking questions, you know, ask questions and even look at what the verbal or even the nonverbal cues are. But I would also just from all of the research, and I mean, I went literally down a weird rabbit hole with this. I would assume that even if you're not being laid off, that as jobs, people retire and things like that, they're not going to be replacing people very easily. Our jobs are going to change in the way that whether we get money or whether we get promotions or whatever we're going to do is going to be impacted on how we rethink and restructure our work. I think that's going to happen regardless of whether we get laid off or not. I think some of the advice they're offering is even good for even if we're not gonna be laid off, but we need to really look at our work differently. And I wanted to also stress that this is not a, like, let's do more or pile on more work or work ourselves to the bone to prove ourselves, but how can we be more strategic with the way that we do our work in order to have better impact?
Next question is, what tips do you have for leaders who are guiding upskilling conversations with their teams, especially when some team members are reluctant to change or to critically reassess how their current responsibilities align with emerging needs?
Uh, you know, I am gonna go into like a because I have time and I can do it. Is that I remember when I first started working in an organization and we had to change and we were about to do a really radical change. At the time, now it seems it was nothing, but we were going from having a large, like a concentrated information center to a large technological center in our organization. And our staff was fighting it tooth and nail. I was new, I was young. I was like, "Oh, sure, whatever. Yeah," but the people who had worked there for a while were sabotaging it every step of the way. I mean, just doing whatever they could to not make it happen. And we knew it was coming. I mean, it was like it was the Titanic. We knew it was gonna be here whether the people liked it or not. But what happened is that what resonated with me, and I always tell people this, is that we had to really recognize that what people were letting go in order to do this was something that they felt a sense of pride in, a sense of confidence in. They were very confident in being knowing and feeling really like they knew exactly what they were doing with the old way of doing whatever. And this new thing that they wanted us to take on, they weren't as confident with. So part of the resistance was like letting go of something like I said the other day, letting go of chocolate and getting something that I don't like. And we have to acknowledge that as we're having conversations with people about letting things go, because I'm a big believer that some things need to be let go in order to take on new things. That we have to be empathetic and realize that what we're letting people go is the feeling of confidence, a feeling of being an expert in something, to taking on something that they're not as confident with and that they're not as comfortable with. And I would say as leaders, when I had to work through it when I was a leader, is I would acknowledge that letting of go of this, but also giving them a lot of reassurance that the skills that they had that made them wonderful at this thing will will get them to be good at the other thing, and giving them grace to like the time period to move on. So in the example that I had before, what we ended up doing is doing a prototype technological center where we all were able to sit in and actually get questions from people about it. And what we eventually realized is that the questions that they were asking us in the big center wasn't not only that different than what we were already getting. And so once people felt more confident that they could take on this, that's when the sabotage went away, is that we did take some time out and to really make people feel it was about competency and feeling comfortable that your skill set will you won't fall flat on your face in this new thing as you're letting go something that you really have you're just really good at. So just I always say recognize that and assure people that they will come their skill sets are transferable. They'll be able to transfer to this and in using that as a guide.
Yeah, I think confidence and just sort of helping people work through it is an important part of the process of it for people in leadership roles. Next question. Large language models have been around for decades, but the current AI trend has some signs of being a bubble that will eventually pop. How much effort should we be putting into adjusting our workflows and skills to AI if many AI programs are unpopular or just a fad industry?
I went down the rabbit hole so you didn't have to. I mean, I sat and listened to all the doomsday experts that said that we were going to be completely eliminated in 5 years and the explanations why and the reason why all of our jobs are going to disappear. I sat and listened to hours of it. What I can tell you is that what I do think I'm not a way over there at all. I do think that all the large language models are not gonna stay. I mean, I don't think they're gonna all survive. I do believe that. I think they'll eventually get eaten up by, whoever. Right now they're saying probably by Google, but whoever is gonna eat them up, they will eat them up. I do think that what I do think, and this is just an Elaina statement from listening to all of this, is that the AI in terms of using it as a replacement for hiring people. And so can you use this within your organization so we don't have to hire as many people? I think that's staying. I do really think that's going to stay. I don't think it's going to be as we're going to all be replaced, but I do think that as our economy slows down, as things around us are not moving as quickly, that slow job growth, the solution to that problem will be, well, why don't you just use AI to do this and that and the other? I do think that probably will happen. I do think us understanding what it is so we can then communicate our value and our worth is important. So, because I was probably where you're at, like, well, like, why should I even be bothering to even pay attention to this? But I also recognize that if I didn't understand it and I didn't understand the possibilities, I didn't understand what was going on, then if all of a sudden I had to justify my worth as a human being within the organization, I don't have the tools to be able to do that communication. So what I've been telling people is that yes, like, understand it, understand the possibilities, the strengths, the weaknesses, yet understand it. If it for anything else, for us to be better storytellers of this is what we have that's really wonderful that AI is never going to be able to do. We still need to have that, be able to communicate that, because I think eventually we're gonna be questioned to justify. So that's kind of what I've been telling people. And that's why just started to just work around and use it whenever I can, not because, I'm like, "Oh, yeah," but it's much more of I need to understand it a little bit better.
So, a question about meeting with people outside of your immediate department. Does this mean meet with people in other departments in your library, or meet with people outside of the library, or both? I'd just be curious to hear you elaborate on this recommendation. I'm also wondering if you can elaborate about how meeting with peers and non HR folks can help protect your job when it's HR or administrators with hiring and firing authority who are the ones making these decisions.
Yeah, no, I agree. Claude said, when I went into the D search in HR, it was under the HR transit for our people who like to follow up. Basically, their rationale for it is that it's HR asking and the people in the room asking questions about you and what you bring. The advice that was giving is if you're in a large organization where there's 100, 200 people in the room and not many people might know you, but really don't know you and what your impact is. It's much more of like you don't know who is giving advice or talking about you in terms of making a decision about who stays or goes. That was sort of the the more detailed of it. Having more people get to know you is that what they're saying is that not only is it more beneficial for people to go, oh yeah, I talked to Elena. Elena's doing this or that that might have been talking to HR that you didn't know or talking to somebody who's gonna be making a decision that you won't know. The overall advice was, like, how can you have people outside of your immediate sphere get to know you? And even if, like, say, you worked in the library but your jobs might be getting scarce, but you're skill adjacent to somewhere on campus or wherever else you're working at, that you could transition somewhere else. They're saying that don't just depend on your department anymore to your skill set could be valuable in a wide variety of places. Talk to a wide variety of people. You're in much more better position strategically to move somewhere else if things got bad. And that was more of the details of that section.
So, follow up on that question about I'm wondering what your thoughts are about moving to a new position now in higher education versus trying to stick around and ride out the potential layoffs. It seems everything is uncertain due to ongoing things happening at the federal level. Do you have advice if you ask high level people and they don't know either?
I would say that if you saw something somewhere else that not I'm moving because I'm scared, but this seems like a great opportunity for growth and development, and it's somewhere else. I this is a I would this is a good time to do it. To be honest, unless you're doing I don't to not do it out of fear, right? But to do it out of, I have a friend who was working in the library and saw the writing on the wall. We had lunch and she was telling me a story. She saw the writing on the wall. That not that she was going to be laid off tomorrow, but she saw that it wasn't. And she started to do just what I just said. She started doing coffee and doing projects working outside the library. And she ended up finding that she was very good in data science, come to be an opening in somewhere else within the organization, looking at data science and AI, looking at it from a higher educational level. They liked her just from their conversations with her. So she was able to leave the library and go over to that section. And she told me later she was so relieved she did that because they were about to let her go anyway. So her instincts of knowing something was wrong and then being able to connect with other things on campus, other people got to know her. She found a job that was still in line with her passion, which was in data science, data analytics, and and was able to secure another job paying more money and she feels a lot more secure in that position moving forward than the job that she had at the
So, have you seen trends for certain types of library roles being more susceptible to layoffs? And I will add to this, you were talking earlier about being AI was not AI replaced, but AI supplemented, or I forget what the terminology was. that you used. Part of me wonders about people who are doing innovative things with AI in cataloging and special collections and that sort of stuff. Are they innovating themselves out of a job?
I don't that I don't the research says they're not. If they are doing the using AI to do innovative things, that's what they're telling you to do because AI can't, even though we have AI agents, they're not there. They're not there. They're not ready to take over everything yet. Maybe later, but right now they're not. So you being able to work with the technology to get things done is what they're saying you should be doing. I think what they're saying you're more vulnerable if you're not working with it at all and you're just doing widget things every day. And I don't want to work with AI and I'm just going to do this. And then somebody else can come along and say, I could actually do Elena's job with AI and me working with AI to do it, you're more likely to be let go, right? Because is pretty much doing your job with somebody else who's more navigating with AI to do it, right? So they're not saying that person who is working not just with AI or whatever emerging technologies you're using, but you're using that to, transform whatever. That's not who they're saying is vulnerable. They're saying the person is like, forget that. I'm just going to just do this, data entry stuff and it's going to be fine, right? That's the one they say are vulnerable.
So the last question that's in the queue, at least right now, is one of the biggest factors in avoiding mass layoffs is union representation. Do you have advice for utilizing unions or professional organizations to avoid potential layoffs? This may be very case specific, and I would be a little trepidatious in answering this question.
Yeah, I think it is case specific. I mean, I worked in an organization before that was heavily unionized, and yes, with unions, people would feel more comfortable like, oh, I have, 30 years of experience. I'm in the union. I should be safe. But I've also, to be honest with you and not to scare you, I've talked to quite a few HR people and people who've laid people off. And some of them have been in unionized environments and they negotiated because of the severity of the budget cuts. They did negotiate with the unions to sort of waive that traditional years of experience scenario. And some of those people did still turn out to be vulnerable. I would still, that is not to be anti-union. I've been in plenty of organizations that had unions and it was fine, but I would not just go, oh, I'm in a union, we're good. I wouldn't feel, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah, I agree. So, one more question. I did have another one come in. Which of the 5 actions that you're recommending usually delivers the highest ROI, return on investment, for someone who isn't actively job hunting yet?
I would say
I think
that
the
whole
yet
thing,
part of it is the important part.
yeah, I would say that that relationship building is important. It was a wake up call for me to even to stay connected with people. It's just a really, really good idea. And, also I'm doing more than one, but I also think just really as you sort of think about your future and stuff, I'm also a super big proponent of not keep taking on work to burn yourself out, but how can you streamline things? What can you think of that still allows you to learn and grow and be more strategic with how you do your work. And even, how you can migrate your work to be more strategic, but still have enjoyment and have that time of your own reflection to be able to think about what that is. Because it is an employee's market. I mean, it's the employee's market right now. And so how can we still honor ourselves as employees but strategically look about where do we want to go and and what skills do we need in order to get there. I just think that's crucial in today's market.
Yeah, if somebody asked me those questions, I would have given the exact same answer. Well, 100% on that. All right, that is all the questions. So let me take just one quick second to thank my very wonderful colleague, Elaina Norlin, for doing all the digging through rabbit holes for the technology, as well as to compile this into a nice, easily digestible set of recommendations. So very much appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This session is being recorded and we'll get it on our archive page within the next day or two. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.